everybody, it's Crystal here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Six the Musical live. There's a difference. The live means I'm actually referring to the new movie version. I say new, but it technically came out like a year or so ago, about a year and a half ago. The only annoying part is that I was not able to watch it until now. So I am giving my review having just watched it today. Because what they did was at first, they only showed it in the UK back in April 2025. I didn't mean to say a year and a half ago. I meant more like half a year ago. Um, they showed it in April 2025 in the UK, and I was not able to watch it because I am not in the UK, and it was only in theaters there for a limited time, and I couldn't find it online anywhere. So I had to wait, and thankfully they eventually brought it into cinemas here in Australia. But okay, screening logistics aside, let's put that aside and discuss Six. Starting off with a little bit of context, because I feel like it helps to know what kind of perspective I'm coming from. So, the very first showing of Six, the original musical, started in the UK. In basically, the original cast was in London. And that matters because it is a British production originally. That matters a little bit. But although the very first production was in, I believe, 2017 or 18, I don't think it was until maybe 2019 or 2020 that I discovered Six. So by the time I became aware of Six, there was the London cast, but there was also an American cast. Well, okay, you may be wondering how I first saw Six. And my first exposure to Six was so at the time we did not have an Australian showing of Six. So because I became interested in the show, I can't remember exactly how I heard about it. It's just I somehow became aware of its existence. Um, I was really curious about it. And the annoying thing about stage musicals is that you have to physically go there to see them. That's not such a bad thing. There are great things about seeing a musical. Um, but the downside is that it has to be showing where you live. So, because I was really curious about it, I found a totally legit recording of the original London production because I thought if I'm going to find it online, I need to have my first exposure be the original. So that matters a little bit when it comes to perspective because it means that my perspective was not tainted, if that's the right word, by a different cast. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing if your first um, exposure to something was a remake or some sort of alternate cast that is not the definitive original. That's totally fine too. I'm just putting that out there and saying my first exposure to Six was the London cast, and I loved it. I loved it, and I became obsessed with it, and I listened to the songs all the time, and it got to a point where I was constantly thinking, I wish this was a movie because then I could get it on DVD and I could rewatch it as many times as I want because that's what I crave. I love rewatching things. I love the familiarity. And the other thing is, even if I was in a city where the musical was playing, it means you have to shell out a lot of money to go to the musical multiple times. It plays for a limited time, and You just, and also for those of us who love predictability, it's not exactly the same every time. Now, that's not always a negative thing. Some people like seeing the slight differences when they go to a musical multiple times. So, this is not a negative at all. This is just my comments and perspective, and why I ended up thinking to myself, I wish this could be a movie. Now, I did end up being able to see. I did end up being able to see Six live eventually, because a few years later, after I got discovered it, um, it did come to Australia, and I got to see it here in Melbourne. I believe I went twice, and it was amazing. Okay, they did a great job with it, definitely. But I did sort of crave to be able to have a movie version with that original London cast that I had grown to love from the recording that I watched. Now, that's not to say that the Australian cast was any worse. Huge props to those cast members whose names I don't remember. I'm sorry. But also there's more than six of them because there are swings and I saw it twice, so there was alternates on the days that I saw it. Anyway, no disrespect to the Australian cast or any other alternate cast. They certainly did great. But as I said, when something is the first version that you saw, it kind of leaves a mark, right? And it leaves you craving to have a definitive version with that original cast. And that is what we now have with Six, the musical live. Of course, you may be thinking, when I was wishing to myself that we could have a movie version, you may be thinking, but it is so designed to be a stage musical. It's not like something like, say, Grease or Rocky Horror or Wicked, where they could make a movie, and because it tells a story like that, it adapts better into the movie world. But back when I was wishing to have a movie version, I was wishing that because I wanted a version that I could own physically and watch on repeat a million times without having to pay each time I wanted to see it. So the tricky thing is, at the time, I thought, okay, it would be great to have that and be able to re-watch it for free. But I thought, surely there's no way they could make a movie out of this, right? Because it is so clearly meant to be a stage musical. It wouldn't work as a movie. I mean, you could maybe make a movie about the six wives, but it would be vastly different. It would not be Six the musical. In fact, you probably couldn't make a movie about all six wives with a movie's runtime. You could maybe do a TV series, but you couldn't do a movie about all six of them. You could maybe do a movie about one of them. You could do a movie series with a set of six movies that each focus on one of them, but you could not feasibly make a proper movie with a story and plot arc that accurately and fully explores all six of Henry VIII's wives. So I am so glad that they didn't go that route. And what they did was even better. They gave us the original London cast on stage with basically the exact same script as a movie. And I was loving it. It was exactly what I wanted. Now all they need to do is release it on DVD so I can buy it and watch it as many times as I want, but hopefully they'll get to that later. Hopefully they will. It is still playing in cinemas in some places, so they're not going to release it physically yet, if at all. Well, that's not the point. So I've rambled on about the logistics of how you make a movie out of 6, but what were my thoughts on the actual movie itself? Well, I've already said that I absolutely loved it, but why did I love it? Well, I think they did everything right, and I know I just keep saying that and not explaining. Okay, let's talk about, well, where do I begin? Obviously, the costumes were the iconic 6 costumes that they were meant to be. And it was the exact original London cast. They all did a phenomenal job, by the way. The acting, the energy, the performances, and obviously the singing. It was just phenomenal. They all gave their characters that personality that I have grown to love. Just to name one, my favorite of the 6 wives is Anne Boleyn. And let me tell you, Millie O'Connell for sure brings that energy to Anne Boleyn. She's always been my favorite. I mean, no disrespect to other casts, again, but I have watched videos of other casts and I saw the Australian cast. And okay, I don't want to sound mean by saying they don't measure up, but I'm just saying, Millie O'Connell brings the energy that makes her the definitive Anne Boleyn. And I could say the same about the other 5 as well. I just didn't dwell on them, but they definitely embody those characters. I'm not just saying this because they are the original cast. There's just something about them that makes those characters so iconic. The other important thing is that with the acting, there are emotional moments in this show. Like, yes, it is a show that is meant to be a performance, it's meant to be a set of songs, but it still tells a story a little bit, especially if you read between the lines. I've always thought to myself, whenever I watch 6, I feel like the one who has the hardest job at acting is Catherine Howard. And that is because if you look closely at her, especially during All You Wanna Do, whenever I have watched 6, whether it be a recording or whether it be the 2 times that I saw it here in Australia, I stare at her and watch her expressions during All You Wanna Do because it is a freaking heavy song. And like really dark. I won't get into it, but just so you know, she was a freaking child when all that stuff was going on. The real person, not the actress. Like, if you don't know what that song is about, look into it. It is dark. I'm not going to get too into it, but by the time Catherine Howard died, she was only 19. That means all that stuff that she sings about, all that stuff that the real person went through, she was a child. And let me just say, getting back to my point about how phenomenal the acting was, the actress who played her certainly did a great job at portraying the freaking trauma that the real Catherine Howard went through. She somehow manages to handle that mix of innocence that the character has while still being able to get across that deep, dark trauma. And that's why I always say Catherine Howard is probably the hardest to play due to those aspects. But moving away from acting, one of the biggest, most important things about the fact that this has been turned into a movie is there are things that inevitably come with making it into a movie. And that's the fact that it is, well, it's a movie, it's a recording, which means cameras are involved and editing. And boy, did they do well with the editing. Like, oh my God. I was a little worried about how it would transfer into being a movie. And let me just say, as a fan of Six who is really obsessed with it and wants everything to be perfect in the way I imagined it, boy, did they deliver. Okay, already in like the first few minutes, I was thinking to myself, they did good with the editing because it means that they need to know when to do a close-up shot, when to zoom in on one person's face, or when to have the background blurry so you're focused on the foreground. These things might seem obvious. We take them for granted, but I noticed them because it is a musical being turned into a movie. But it's not a musical into a movie like something like Grease, where you actually have to write a new script and like have different scenes. They were performing it live on stage at the time, but there were multiple cameras going on. It was professionally shot for the purpose of this movie. And that matters because when you're watching it as a stage show, basically your view is dictated by where you sit. If you have front row seats, then maybe you're looking up at them. If you're in the back, then things won't be quite as clear. But if you're in the front row, you can get a better look at like their facial expressions and all that good stuff. But with a movie, we don't get to decide where we look, because the other thing when you're watching a stage show is, one, it's dictated by where you're sitting, as I said, but two, it's also dictated by where your eyes go. You get to choose. Who do I want to look at right now? I could look at the one who's singing, or I could take a little peek at the ones in the background and see if they're doing anything interesting. But with this movie, it takes away that choice. That's not a negative, by the way. It's just a consequence of going from musical to movie and having cameras involved. We see what the editors want us to see. And I think they did a great job of deciding what we see. Again, all this stuff is stuff that people take for granted when they watch any movie. But it's more noticeable when you go from musical to movie, because what happens is that sometimes we have a wide shot of the whole stage, but sometimes we zoom in on a close-up. And those moments, they matter. You might not think about it, but it matters. I remember this one shot where we were focused on Jane Seymour. She was talking a bit before her song. And then I noticed in one shot that I could see Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn in the background, but they were very blurry. That wouldn't happen if I was watching a stage performance, but they purposely did it like that to blur the background and make the foreground crisp and clear. So that's what we focus on, her expression in that moment. And that's just one example of the many, many moments that looked amazing. But the reason I bring up editing, like within the first few minutes, I was already thinking, okay, I need to mention this in my review. It is going so perfect. But then came Jane Seymour. Not Jane Seymour, oh my God, Catherine Parr. Don't mind me getting the names mixed up. Then came Catherine Parr before her song, and she says, you know what, I'm good. And then she says, turn off the spotlight. And she says, can we stop everything? And what happened? Small spoiler, sorry, but it was, I have to mention, it doesn't really count as a spoiler, it's not a story thing, it's an editing thing. But what happened was she said, can we stop everything? And then I was not expecting this. The screen did a fuzzing thing, and then for a brief moment, the whole screen went black for a second, which is crazy when you're experiencing it in a movie theater. Like, obviously, you're not gonna think that the movie is broken or anything. It's just one of those amazing tricks. First, the screen went black, and when it came back on, the picture quality, I love this, the picture quality looked like it was some kind of amateur recording someone took in the the stage show. Like those many recordings that we use to watch musicals that we can't go and see, that normally get taken down off YouTube for copyright, but you know the ones. Those ones that people do when they're being sneaky. But back to the point. The way the picture quality shifted to that, it was amazing. Like, it was the perfect idea. It was genius. Like, okay, I'll stop harping on it, but like, I was amazed in the moment when the screen went black and then it switched to that recorded footage kind of style just for that moment until she was ready to actually start her song. And it was just the most genius idea to tie together this idea of the whole show. It worked so well that I have to give props to it. Oh boy. But like, yeah, I don't know what else to bring up. I did not script this review, by the way. I decided I'm just gonna wing it and start talking. But yeah, it was everything just tied together so amazingly, and it was everything I could possibly want in a movie version of Six. I've been wanting this for the past few years, and I was worried that if they tried, they wouldn't do it the way I wanted it. But they delivered. We got, I would call this movie basically Six, the definitive edition. Like, yeah, there's the original London performances, but then we have so many adaptations in different countries with different casts. This, I would label it the definitive edition. They made it into a movie, so then we have a recorded version with the original cast, and it is just, I don't know how else to phrase it. It is perfect. It is everything I wanted. Thank you, Six the Musical. And you know what? This goes without saying, but also they looked like they were having so much fun with it as well. I mean, you'd expect them to, but like, I just felt like saying, like for those six original cast members to end up doing this, and to put those costumes back on after the years of how long it's been since the original, that must have been amazing for them as well. And they look great, and everything was just perfect. I don't know what else to say, so I guess I should end this off soon, because then I don't want to keep rambling too much. But yeah, everything about this movie was exactly what I wanted. The only thing left that I want is to be able to buy it physically, like on DVD, so then I can watch it as many times as I want without paying again and again. But that's beside the point. I do hold out hope that there's going to be some way that I can permanently purchase it, but I know that that's not happening yet because it is still in theaters for some countries. But logistics aside, it was amazing. I don't know what else to say. It was amazing. I loved it. I love this musical, and I'm so glad that it has been immortalized in this movie form. It was just the best. It's exactly what I could have asked for. This is how you do a movie adaptation of Six the Musical. This is exactly what we wanted, and I don't know what else to say. But what did you guys think? If you have seen Six the Musical live, feel free to comment below. Tell me your thoughts. I'd love to start a proper discussion about all the intricacies of this movie because it was amazing, and I've already rambled on for way too long, but I could talk about it for ages. I could ramble so much about Six. Um, Maybe one day I'll make more videos about Six. I've loved this show for the past few years now, and I was obsessed with it for a while. But unfortunately, when I first discovered it and watched that London recording, I didn't really have the YouTube channel back then, so I wasn't going to make a review back then. And by the time I had the channel going, I wasn't going to go back and retroactively make a review because it's easier to review things you've just seen. But I do still absolutely love Six, and so there's always a tiny chance that I might make more videos on the topic, whether it be like a discussion of the musical itself and how and the themes and the way it tells the story of those six wives, because there is so much I could talk about. But this review has just been about the new movie Six the Musical Live, and I absolutely loved it, hands down. Like, I know you might think I'm just someone who loves everything, but this, I was worried that it might not meet my expectations. Because I love the musical, I would have been really critical and I would have been really disappointed if they got it wrong in my mind, but they didn't. In fact, they exceeded my expectations. So, I'm going to bring this review to a close and just say Six the Musical Live is the definitive edition, and it has immortalized this amazing show, and I am loving it. Let me know what you guys think, and I'm going to end this off, and I will see you next time for more reviews of other things. I don't know. We'll see. See you then.